The 1930s forged some of the most financially disciplined men in United States history. These fathers witnessed the collapse of banks and savings before the existence of the FDIC. With unemployment near 25% and a devastated stock market, they developed money rules born of absolute necessity. They did not use complex instruments, but 10 brutally simple principles to build generational wealth from nothing. These rules, forgotten today, are the path to recovering financial stability. Leave a like, subscribe, and share. Let's get started. Rule number 1, spend less than you earn every single month, without exception. The fundamental rule is to spend less than you earn every month, without exception. While the modern American often resorts to credit to cover deficits, the 1930s father understood that debt meant vulnerability and loss of control over one's own future. The gap between income and expenses, the savings rate, is the most powerful variable for long-term wealth, surpassing even income level or investment returns. Rule number 2, own your home free and clear as fast as humanly possible. For this generation, a mortgage was not an optimization tool, but a threat. The goal was to pay it off as soon as possible to eliminate the largest fixed expense in the household budget. Paying off the house quickly not only saves massive interest, but also frees up capital during the most productive stage of working life to accelerate investment, producing superior results to carrying debt while investing in parallel. Rule number 3, never finance a depreciating asset. Assets that lose value from the moment of purchase, such as cars or furniture, should never be financed. Paying interest for something that depreciates is a costly mathematical error. The 1930s father saved until he could pay in cash or kept his existing goods until they were mechanically useless. Avoiding interest on depreciating assets marks a critical difference between those who accumulate wealth and those who do not. Rule number 4, build the emergency fund before you do anything else. A solid emergency fund is the prerequisite for any other financial activity. In the absence of social safety nets, these men knew that liquid savings were the only defense against the ordinary setbacks of life. Before looking for businesses or investments, a cushion must be established to avoid falling into debt when faced with unexpected expenses, ensuring that an unforeseen event does not turn into a family catastrophe. Rule number 5, multiple income streams are not optional. Relying on a single source of income was considered imprudent. Diversification, whether through a garden for sales, side jobs, or rental properties, was an essential form of risk management. Just as a farmer plants several crops, 1930s fathers sought multiple streams of income to ensure that the failure of one would not destroy the stability of the home. Rule number 6, invest in what you understand. The generation of men who came of age financially during the Great Depression watched sophisticated investors, financial institutions, and ordinary savers alike lose everything in markets they did not truly understand. Their response was a money rule of elegant simplicity. Never put your money into anything you cannot explain completely and whose risks you do not fully comprehend. This principle, which Warren Buffett has articulated in modern terms as investing only within your circle of competence, was practiced by 1930s fathers as a matter of hard experience rather than theoretical investment philosophy. For many men of that generation, the investments they understood were the ones they could see and touch. Land, their own business, rental property in their own neighborhood, and savings held in federally insured accounts after the FDIC was established in 1933. These were investments whose value they could assess directly from their own knowledge and experience, whose risks they could evaluate without relying on the representations of salespeople with financial incentives to sell. According to academic research on retail investor outcomes published in financial economics journals, individual investors who trade in markets and instruments they do not thoroughly understand consistently underperform those who invest in simpler, better understood vehicles. The 1930s rule of investing only in what you understand was not unsophisticated. It was a recognition that the appearance of sophistication in financial products frequently serves the seller's interests rather than the buyer's. Rule number 7, teach your children about money before anyone else does. The generational wealth that 1930s fathers built was not simply financial, it was educational. The men who came through the Depression with their financial principles intact and their families secure were determined that their children would understand money, its nature, its behavior, and the rules for managing it before the world had a chance to teach them otherwise. Financial literacy was treated as a parental responsibility of the same order as teaching children to read or to work. Children in households shaped by Depression-era fathers were given explicit financial education. They were shown the family budget, given allowances tied to specific responsibilities with real consequences for mismanagement, taught the difference between needs and wants before they were 10 years old, and introduced to the concept of saving a fixed percentage of any money received before any of it was spent. According to research on intergenerational wealth transfer published by economists at the Federal Reserve, the most powerful predictor of adult financial behavior is not income level, education level, or social class, but the financial habits and attitudes modeled and explicitly taught in the childhood home. Families in which parents discussed money openly, modeled saving and delayed gratification, and gave children early experience managing small amounts of real money produced adults who were measurably better at managing larger amounts of money. The 1930s father's commitment to financial education within the family was not merely cultural tradition. It was the mechanism through which his own hard-won financial wisdom became his most durable bequest to his children. Rule number 8, your reputation is your most valuable business asset. In the economic environment of the 1930s, where formal credit reporting systems were limited and community relationships were the primary basis for business credit and employment references, a man's reputation for honesty, reliability, and the faithful fulfillment of financial obligations was not merely a moral virtue, it was a bankable asset with direct, measurable economic value. The 1930s father who always paid his debts on time, who delivered what he promised when he promised it, who never misrepresented his products or services, and who could be trusted completely in every financial transaction built a reputation that opened doors, generated referrals, and created business opportunities that were unavailable to men of equivalent or greater talent and intelligence who did not maintain the same standard. This principle is documented extensively in business history research, including in studies of small business success factors conducted by the Small Business Administration, which consistently identify reputation and trust as among the most critical assets of successful small businesses. In the digital age, where online reviews and social media have made reputation more transparent and more consequential than at any previous time in history, the 1930s father's understanding that reputation is a financial asset has become more rather than less relevant. A tradesman, a small business owner, or a professional whose reputation for honesty and reliability is impeccable has a competitive advantage that cannot be purchased, manufactured, or replicated through marketing. It must be built through consistent behavior over time, exactly as it was in the 1930s. Leave a like, subscribe, and share. Rule number 9, live below your means at every income level. One of the most important and most consistently violated money rules in modern America is the principle that lifestyle should not automatically expand to consume every increase in income, a phenomenon that behavioral economists call lifestyle inflation or lifestyle creep. The 1930s father, who had experienced both poverty and relative prosperity, understood from direct experience that happiness and financial security were not the same thing as consumption, and that the path from one income level to the next did not require proportionally increasing expenditure at every step. This understanding produced households where income increases were directed primarily toward debt reduction, savings, and investment rather than toward larger homes, newer cars, and more expensive recreation. According to research by economists Sendil Mullainathan at Harvard University and Eldar Shafir at Princeton University, published in their book Scarcity, the psychological tendency to expand consumption with income is both universal and deeply counterproductive for wealth building. The households that accumulate the most wealth at any given income level are consistently those that maintain the widest gap between income and expenditure over the longest period, not those with the highest incomes or the highest investment returns. The 1930s father's habit of living below his means at every income level was the behavioral engine that powered everything else. The emergency fund, the mortgage payoff, the investment account, and the financial education of his children were all funded by the gap between what he earned and what he spent, a gap he protected with the same vigilance he would have applied to any other valuable asset. Rule number 10, build something that outlasts you. The final and perhaps most powerful money rule of the 1930s father was the most long-range. The conviction that the purpose of financial discipline was not comfort in the present, but the building of something. A business, a property, a set of skills and values, a financial foundation that would outlast the man himself and provide for his children and grandchildren after he was gone. This generational orientation toward wealth, in which current sacrifice is explicitly connected to future benefit for people not yet born, is one of the defining characteristics of families that build lasting, multi-generational wealth. It is also one of the most foreign concepts to a consumer culture built on immediate gratification and present-oriented spending. According to research on estate planning and intergenerational wealth transfer published by the Federal Reserve and the Brookings Institution, the families that successfully transfer wealth across generations share several consistent characteristics. They begin planning early. They involve multiple family members in financial education and decision-making. They maintain clear financial records and legal documents, and they treat wealth not as something to be consumed in one generation, but as something to be stewarded and grown for the next. The 1930s father who planted fruit trees he would not live to eat from in their full maturity, who purchased land he intended to pass to his children, who built a business with his son's future role already planned, was practicing a form of financial thinking that has produced more genuine multi-generational wealth than any investment strategy, tax shelter, or financial product ever created. He was building not for himself, but for the people who would come after him. And that orientation, more than any specific rule or technique, is the deepest and most enduring secret of generational wealth. The 10 money rules that 1930s fathers used to build generational wealth from nothing were not the product of financial education or professional advice. They were the product of lived experience with economic catastrophe, and they were applied with a seriousness and consistency that the relative prosperity of subsequent decades gradually eroded. The generations that inherited the wealth these men built often did not inherit the principles that built it. And the result is a modern America in which household debt is at record levels, savings rates are near historic lows, financial literacy is declining, and the gap between those who build wealth and those who do not is widening. The rules themselves have not become obsolete. Spend less than you earn. Own your home outright as fast as possible. Never finance a depreciating asset. Build your emergency fund first. Maintain multiple income streams. Invest only in what you understand. Teach your children about money. Protect your reputation. Live below your means. Build something that outlasts you. Every one of these rules is as applicable today as it was in 1935. The only thing that has changed is that we have largely stopped following them, and the financial consequences of that abandonment are visible in the balance sheets of millions of American households. The 1930s, fathers who followed these rules built wealth from nothing because they had no other choice. We have a choice. We should choose the same rules. Leave a like, subscribe, and share. See you next time.